Okay. Thanks, Dora. Thanks for having me today all. Okay. So for the first presentation in this room, uh, we'll go through about automating ops pipeline with data and deploy. So mostly we'll go through about like proposing how to make our infrastructure more reliable, available, and secure. So like actually from DevOps or SRE perspective, how to make all this ML pipeline, machine learning pipeline is available as soon as possible with this tool, for example, Cloud Deploy and Vertex AI. Then, okay, before we go through, my name is Ananda Rahmawati. I'm a cloud and DevOps engineer in Singapore for public sector there, like for 60 plus years of experience. Actually, I'm also a legal developer expert for modern architecture. So all the things, for example, you do your application. So like what the DevOps or SRE things is like how to make that application is available publicly uh, with like secure paths and those things we and like all the resources provided by basically we enhance with that. And I'm also student actually I'm taking master degree for computer science. This is a part time actually like hopefully you can I can finish like next year. And okay. So so first we'll go through about MLOps on Vertex AI. Have you ever deployed a model to production? So this like as I said before, from infra perspective, from infrastructure engineer perspective, how to deliver the model to productions easily and to avoid a repeatable task. I mean, like, I don't want to build and deploy and train, tuning, and so on manually. Instead of we are using tools like Cloud Deploy provided with GCP to do those things automatically or repeatable, like with, I mean, instead of focusing on building manually those models, we can focus on other tasks such as like more productive, focus on the application development, on like make application more reliable, more secure, on so on. And also like more fix bugs and deploy a new feature and so on. So here, like the quick recap, what the MLOps pipeline inside. Here, as you see, probably you're familiar already with the machine learning development, training, continuous training, ML deployment, prediction, serving, and continuous monitoring. How to make those things deploy automatically. I mean, from the SRE perspective, we're focusing on the reliability. Like, we don't want to, actually, one of the common issue like where we are deploying manually the model, some case, probably not very often, but there is a human error like we deploy in the productions, but we miss something configuration there. So we want to avoid that also. So instead of deploying manually replicable, we're using the tools provided by basically like Cloud Deploy to deploy the model, to train the model also. Automatically, we set the pipeline, for example, to deploy the model to development project, to staging project, and the production project based on the environment variable. Then after all the pipelines work successfully, then we can focus on, for example, continuous monitoring. How to, because uh, once the pipelines which work successfully, we have to monitor also, so we can see like within this month, for example, how many errors that we will get. I mean, instead of focusing on these things manually, you can enhance the okay. This month, some tickets are raised by user. Some errors were there. Then how to make the error reduce for the next month. So and also for example, if there is an vulnerability issue raised by security engineer, so we can focus to fix those issue instead of this thing. So these AI solutions by Google also. So probably already familiar with Gemini agent, but the AI agent builder, virtual AI model builder, model garden, then this underlying surface by the GCP, the AI solutions that we may use for the, for example, the case, but now I'm focusing on here these two tasks like training operationalization and model deployment. How to make that deployment automatically. We don't want to, like as I mentioned before, repeatable tasks. So because somehow when we build manually also it takes like around 15 minutes, 20 minutes, then instead of waiting those building process, you can focus on the tasks, right? So that's the goal actually. Actually, the output will be same. I mean, there is no difference between building manually the model or automating by this cloud deploy. But we just remove the manual repeatable tasks to fix like human error issue, then to save times and so on. Then how would you implement, because somehow you already implement the, for example, the CI/CD pipelines in the traditional applications, but now in the case we're focusing on how to deploy the model, the AI ML model into Vertex AI. Is that possible? Because probably we already use cloud deploy to build applications, we authorize the applications using cloud build, save into I think like register and deploy in cloud run. But is that possible if we do the same way for the ML applications? So that's the goal that I want to achieve. Because, for example, the infrastructure like now cloud run already support with GPU, right? So nowadays it's already support, but then how about the pipeline? So this is the terminology. So for the context, for the traditional applications, you may know already like once the code done, then you do a unit test, integration test, acceptance test, like all the days, all the tests until we deploy through productions. Like we integrate the code between each of the developer into the centralized place like the repository called, like for example, GitHub or GitLab and so on. So instead of like work independently, we integrate each of the code between then we test. Only like for unit test, we test by for each function. Then we integrate using repository. Then we do integration test. Then acceptance test. Then we go to productions. Then how about the continuous deployment? In terms of like, for example, uh, we want to release a new feature like every 2 weeks. But then how to avoid like big bang bug, like because this is like a new not really new actually, but then how to make that deploy application deployments is more safe in terms like, for example, human error issue, common issue like, for example, if we encounter issue like this is a really minor issue, but then impact in our applications. But then how to roll back the application easily. So that's one of the benefits if we use continuous deployment itself. But how about that is for the traditional or common applications. But how the continuous delivery for application for machine learning model itself? What's different? Actually, the process is almost same. Like we deploy to the development, deploy to staging, deploy to productions. Then what to change? What is the challenge? Because probably some of the challenges we may encounter, for example, like when we deploy the model, we may take longer than the infrastructures like not really supported yet. For example, like Cloud Run just like recently, like a year ago, support the GPU, but then so the options like we're using PM or GPE and so on. And another issue like for the latency also it may impact in our applications. Okay, how can we improve? Okay, so opportunity and farmer progression of ability to progress rules between them staging production. So instead of like we build and deploy the application, the model manually, you can let the cloud deploy use the feature. We can let the cloud deploy to do those tasks automatically based on, for example, the environment itself. We define the tag and, for example, once the dev staging passed the task, so like you can merge or you can release to main brands and sorry, you can merge the main brands and you can release. And release should be immutable. These are terms that these are common terms that when we're talking about microservices, like for example, we build the image model, we push the artifact to history, then somehow then there is an issue within the image, so we can just roll back the image. You can't like fix, you can do like hotfix within the image because once the image, once the deployment has an issue there, probably it will be pushed by the next deployment. So like that's why I mentioned here really should be immutable. So like we can release roll back and roll out the position based on the image directly. Then approval gates. This one like for example if we deploy the applications from dev to staging, we can push and release automatically. But then how about the corrections? They show approval gates there. So like everything that have to test in the staging must be placed first. Then for example, lead or L3 engineer should approve that code before pushing to the production brands. And also how there should be a policy like guardrails to like for example if there is an issue how to roll back the feature easily to the previous versions and how to roll out easily also to the next versions as when the issue has fixed also. And also yeah, wouldn't it be better to use a continuous delivery tool together with testing AI? Because now we're talking about the machine learning model. How that easily be better also what's the challenge of pros and cons when we are using Vertex and cloud deploy. And okay, now we're talking about cloud deploy. So cloud deploy is the so actually in GCP there are many services that start with cloud. For example, cloud build to build the image. Like actually we have the model, we have Docker file, like the template to build the image. Then based on the Docker file, we build the image and save into the artifact registry. Actually, the previous name is cloud registry, so then they rename to artifact registry. Then based on the image, we can deploy the model into the respective environment. So the goal of the cloud deploy actually will to deploy the applications no matter like regardless of design is a machine learning model or not. Like actually, it's we can deploy any traditional application using this cloud deploy. Then where so we deploy like for example the cloud run, GKE and so on. So these are actually like to deploy the applications based on the image that we push into a bigger registry. So instead of redeploying manually, we can use the cloud deploy. So actually we deploy manually also possible, but then as I mentioned before, we want to remove the replicable tasks. Then instead of put that deploy manually, we can focus the other tasks such as like enhanced monitoring, reduce the issue in the infra and so on. So how cloud deploy works? So actually here, like for example using DKE, we can deploy, for example, to dev environment. Then once it phase, you can see the green one. It's a sign that okay, this the deployment and phase. Then we can push to staging. Then there is a canary. Then one of the deployment methods to deploy to the productions. So the canary one actually like we deploy based on the percentage. For example, like okay, we deploy the new versions in the same place as the old one. So like in the same place, there is the old version and the new version. Then we test, for example, see if there is no issue, then we remove the old pass. So like at the same time, well, we have to make sure that there is no issue within the new versions. Once all the, like for example, the regression tests pass, then we remove the old one. That's how the canary works. Yeah, but actually we can do with the other methods also. For example, using the blue green and the A/B testing for the staging one and yeah. Okay. So the how cloud deploy works. So like we define the delivery pipeline. This is a YAML file. We write down the instruction in a YAML file. Okay. The first one we deploy with that. The second one we deploy to the staging when we write down the instruction there, and we set the target also. So this the interesting for the MLOps pipelines because in the cloud deploy we can set the target to Vertex AI. So the model will be deployed to Vertex AI. If okay, I'll show you in the next slide. Okay. So here custom target. So this is a pretty new feature provided by cloud deploy. So we can set a custom target in cloud deploy to, for example, now in the context where we want to deploy the model the machine learning model that will be used by Vertex AI, right? So we have to set the custom target instead of deploying to like Cloud Run, GK, and so on. We deploy to Vertex AI. So yeah, enable deployment, expand, and so on. Yeah, this you can see more in the documentation with that. So yeah, a lot of the custom target actually provided by cloud deploy here. Then how to use cloud deploy custom target with the AI. Okay, the first one. Okay, this is scenario. Okay, the first one we train and register a model version in a Vertex AI. Then we create a target endpoint. So this is the common process, right? We train and register model in Vertex AI model will be different. Then we create a target endpoint in a Vertex AI prediction. Then we will register a custom target image, create a top deploy configuration, then start deploy rollout to deploy the respective model to the target that we define in the category exam. So like the goal is here from the step one and step two is to make that deploy known this endpoint. So like where shall I deploy the model? Okay, this like the destinations, right? There is a direction there. Okay, the first one, train and register model version. Okay, this is the Vertex pipeline, data processing, training, and condition is like we build pipeline, we leverage DCP managed service to build the pipeline with example one. Then, yeah, okay. Now, in the Vertex AI, we create a model registry here, right? To this is like a version control to track the model that will be deployed by cloud deploy itself. So like once the deploy has finished, it will be stored in here, the model itself. So like once the model has successfully built and finished, we can see here in a model registry, then we can use this model registry to do the other things like applications and so on. We can consume by the application itself. Okay, the first one here is the training, and then create the target endpoint Vertex.ai. And now, once we like create the model registry in the Vertex AI, then we create the Vertex AI endpoint. So like the endpoint is like to let the cloud endpoint know that okay, I will deploy the model to the and it will store to the model registry by this endpoint. It's like okay, to start models, provide an online sampling, and integrate with model monitoring and explainable analysis the feature of the data activity. Okay, this is an example. Okay, we create the target endpoint by using the cloud AI endpoint here. Then we will register custom target machine in the cloud deploy. Here we are using the command line to build and register the custom target. Here the YAML file that I mentioned before. We set the source of the YAML file, for example, in the storage. Here is the respective permission to deploy action, and then a quick deploy configuration. So this is the YAML file like with the deploy API with kind of delivery pipeline which defines the target here, and then this okay, we set the Vertex endpoint. This the endpoint that we created before. Okay, we define application model. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Now, once we go to the cloud deploy dashboard, you will see the pipeline will be one tab here. Then you can click the button to promote to the next environment. For example, it's like manual approval get I mentioned before. Also, start cloud deploy workup. Here, the example we deploy release create this like for the production itself. Okay, then once it's done, if you deploy to Vertex AI before deploy to Vertex AI dev and deploy to the Vertex AI productions, depends on the environment. So then we go to the Vertex AI dashboard, and then we'll see in the endpoint itself, the state will be active. This the dev, import, and production. Then this the model. Yeah. Then this yeah. Okay, so what's next? After we've done to build the pipeline, once the model delivered successfully to the front AI by cloud deploy and the endpoint, and also the custom target and so on, so what's the next? The first one, probably we can listen to GCHing to model with notification to continuous training. Because, for example, like once the training has failed, like what's supposed what the cloud deploy is supposed to do instead of like just fail, like send a notifications, then you can add continuous monitoring. So like the cloud deploy will let us know by email, by Slack, and so on. Then you can use the cloud deploy canary requirement by rolling out a new version once all the phase have passed and removing the old versions. You can set like motivation also and so on. Okay, this is a fun question. For deploy and enhance vertical deployment, custom target enable deployment to vertical in a way that you want with the custom logics. Like for example, in like this project, and so on. So like we can define a custom target there. Okay, thank you. If you have any questions, we can discuss later of this session or can recognize in social media like LinkedIn. Thank you for having me.